Of Aaron Seiler expresses disbelief Monday, not only at the death of their loved one, but at the fact that the officer who shot him was back on duty 10 days after shooting someone else.
I don't even think he should be on the force right now. I think he should be suspended without pay because that's just ridiculous. 2 weeks later.
Kenosha police say Saturday was Pablo Torres' first day back on patrol after shooting a 64-year-old man on March 4th.
In the wake of Ferguson, Staten Island, Cleveland, and so many other incidents involving law enforcement and the general public, there is not one single doubt. How it's being done is not working. There are huge gaps between the citizens and their police, and when it comes to investigating these crimes, departments should perhaps look to the skies of a sort to try and find new ways to bring criminals to justice and keep the cops themselves in line. All right, let's welcome to MidPoint a full-time author and consultant who retired as the Rocky Mountain Bureau Chief for Aviation Week and Space Technology after 22 years in that position. Also the father of Erik Scott, a young man shot by police in Las Vegas for having a legal concealed weapon in his possession. I should say Scott, by the way. Let's welcome his dad, William Scott. And our next guest is father of Michael Bell, Jr., who was shot and killed by a police officer after a traffic stop of unknown origin. He's a tireless advocate for legislation to keep police accountable. Welcome, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Bell. Gentlemen, you both have a big stake in this. I thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Ed. Good to be here.
Bill, let me get to you first because you talked a lot about this, the part of using the aviation techniques involved in law enforcement. What exactly do you mean by that? Because people immediately think about airplanes, but there's more to it than that. It's the investigative procedures, correct?
That's right. Both your other guest, Mike Bell, and I have been advocating for bringing some of the protocols and processes from the aviation community that have been very successful in driving aircraft accidents down to very low levels over many decades, and bring those things over, those ideas, those concepts, those procedures over to the law enforcement community. And the precedent is there. They work. And if law enforcement would adopt many of the same types of procedures, I think we'd see a lot of these officer-involved shootings and deaths drop dramatically as well.
Mike, is the one that really struck me, I guess, independent investigations of aircraft incidents and fatal accidents. But the key words here are independent investigations. Why is that so critical to helping fix this problem?
The best way to describe it to your viewers is this. In the aviation industry, there's external investigation and independent review, and in the law enforcement industry there's independent investigation and internal investigation and self-review, and those two concepts they don't work together. When my own son was killed, I was waiting for the investigation to occur similar to that in an aviation mishap investigation, but it didn't happen. And after a period of time, I recognized that there were 6 core elements in the aviation mishap industry that were being implemented to drive the safety record to the ultimate lows and crashes. But in the law enforcement industry, that wasn't occurring. I mean, they were failing at every single one of those elements.
Isn't it not fair to say, though, Mike, that a lot of what you've got here, and Bill, I'm going to get to you in just a minute here, but Mike, a lot of this seems like common sense. Clear identification of root causes, a protocol of accountability, a system to identify unsafe activities. My goodness, this just looks like if you had minor intelligence, you would think that this needs to be put into place. Why not? Why isn't it there?
The reason why is that because law enforcement has been around for hundreds of years, and it's a culture that's pretty much stayed, where aviation essentially evolved from the 1940s. So you had 2 professions, both authorized to use deadly force, like a military officer, and one evolved later than the other. And so the newer industry modified what it needed to do to be safe, where the other industry just continued with the same old protocol.
Bill, again, I keep hearing these words in here, culture. It's the culture that it's been driven to over generations. With all these things here, and you got it all right, don't we have to first attack the inherent culture of the law enforcement communities themselves?
That's very true, Ed. But what we're advocating here does exactly that. It encourages an improved culture. For instance, in aviation, on the civil side, the National Transportation Safety Board was set up years ago to be a truly independent tool, multidisciplinary tool for investigating any aircraft accident. And And they did it for self-survival, if you will, because how many people would jump on an airliner if they knew there was a high chance or high probability they wouldn't get to their destination? For instance, law enforcement today is killing 3 people every single day of the year, year after year, and that number keeps climbing. What if aviation was doing the same thing? Would you and I crawl on an airliner if we knew there's a good chance that every single day, X number of people would be killed?
Then, Bill, let me start with you, only because I'm short on time here. What then, in your opinion, briefly, is stopping all this from getting into account here and putting these simple, common sense ideas into work?
2 things: political will at the top. Mike fought that at the state level, but we also need this third-party investigation tool at the national level. The second part is strong pushback from police unions at the local level. So there are huge built-in obstacles to getting to that point.
Lieutenant Colonel, I guess let me put it to you then with regard to this whole idea of police unions. Is that the biggest problem? They simply always want to protect their own?
That is the case, but I will tell you that police need to be part of the solution. In Wisconsin, I worked with the unions. Some of the unions were pretty upset that the other unions were making the whole profession look bad. And so they saw an opportunity for change here, and they got on board and they said, yeah, we're not opposed to this. Remember, we're looking at 3 legs of a stool. We're looking for external investigation, independent review, and then a solid collection of data, and then distribution of those facts to the law enforcement community, so later on they can study those things and figure out what did we do wrong and how do we prevent that from happening again. That's why the aviation industry is successful. Law enforcement needs to copy it.
Mike, 20 seconds. Do you get the sense that there are a lot of cops out there, unions and otherwise, who really want to make these changes, good cops that want to see this happen?
I will absolutely say yes, there is. The good cops are the quiet majority. I have a lot of respect for the officers out there. A couple of bad cops are giving the whole industry a bad name, and they want to be trusted. They don't want to be hated by America. They want to be accepted for the profession that they are.
I say this every time we talk about any subject like this. There are good cops out there. There are bad cops out there. We need to get the bad ones out of the system, and we need to make this work. Bill Scott, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Bell, fascinating what you're doing here. Keep up the good work. We'll stay in touch. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. It's what makes America run, good old-fashioned corporate greed. And in this case, it's all about the hiring of illegal workers. We'll talk about that when we continue right here on MidPoint.